Have you ever wondered why some people generate instant desire while you go unnoticed? The answer isn't in your appearance or social status, it's in the words you use, and today I'll reveal the 3 phrases that, according to Neil Strauss, can make anyone desire you intensely. This information will forever change the way you communicate. Imagine this. You're in a normal conversation, but suddenly you say something that triggers a deep desire in the other person. It's not manipulation. It's understanding the psychology of desire. Neil Strauss, after years of studying human attraction, discovered that certain phrases activate automatic emotional responses that generate desire. You don't need to be the most attractive or the richest. You just need to understand these verbal triggers that very few people know. The first key to generating intense desire is what Strauss calls the emotional mirror principle. Most people make the mistake of trying to impress by showing achievements, telling grand stories, or talking too much about themselves. But this generates exactly the opposite of desire. When you bombard someone with information about yourself, you give them all the power. As Strauss says, mystery creates desire, information destroys it. The first powerful phrase is, "I'm intrigued by that part of you that you don't show to others." Why does it work? Because when you say this, you demonstrate 2 things simultaneously: that you're observing at a deeper level than others, and that you recognize there are layers to that person that go beyond the superficial. The psychology behind this is fascinating. We all want to be seen, but not just on the surface. We want someone to recognize our complexity. When you use this phrase, you create an immediate connection, because the other person feels that you're truly seeing them. Imagine you're in a normal conversation and after listening attentively you say, "You know, there's something in the way you talk about your work that intrigues me. It seems there's a part of you that you don't show to others." In that moment, you've completely changed the conversation dynamic. You've created a space of emotional intimacy. Try this exercise. The next time you're in a conversation, observe beyond the words. Look for the emotions behind what the person is saying. What parts of themselves are they hiding? What do they truly value? Then, find the right moment to use this first powerful phrase. Don't use it at the beginning, but when you've already established some rapport. Observe how the energy of the conversation changes instantly. Repeat this mantra every morning. Today, I will see beyond people's masks and connect with their true self. This will not only help you generate desire, but create authentic connections that will last much longer than superficial attraction. And here's the truth that few understand. The most intense desire doesn't come from physical attraction, but from feeling truly seen and understood by another person. When you master this skill, you transform every interaction into an opportunity for deep connection. If this concept is resonating with you, make sure to subscribe right now to this channel so you don't miss any of our videos on psychology and advanced seduction. And that's what we'll talk about in the next point. The second key to generating intense desire is what Strauss calls the principle of emotional tension. Most people try to please and accommodate constantly, eliminating any possibility of creating tension. But tension is exactly what generates desire. As Strauss explains, without tension, there is no release. Without release, there is no pleasure. The second powerful phrase is, "I like you, but I'm not sure if we would work together." This phrase seems contradictory, right? And that's exactly its strength. When you say this, you create what psychologists call cognitive dissonance, an inconsistency that the brain needs to resolve. The other person will think, "They like me, but why wouldn't we work? What do they see in me that I don't see?" This uncertainty generates immediate interest and awakens the desire to prove you wrong. It's one of the most powerful psychological triggers that exist. The mistake most people make is showing too much interest too soon, eliminating any challenge and with it any real desire. Think about the most intense relationships you've had in your life. Isn't it true that there was always some tension, some uncertainty that kept you hooked? That's precisely the dynamic you're creating with this phrase. You're not being manipulative. You're being honest about the reality that compatibility goes beyond initial attraction. Has it happened to you that someone you completely ignored suddenly became irresistible when you felt you could lose them? That's the power of emotional tension. It works because it goes against what everyone else does. While others chase, you create a space that the other person wants to fill. Here's the exercise to master this second key. The next time you feel a connection with someone, resist the urge to say how much you like them. Instead, after a moment of genuine connection, use the second powerful phrase. Don't use it mechanically, but after a real moment of connection. Observe how the person responds, how their behavior changes, and how the level of interest immediately increases. Repeat this mantra every time you feel the need to chase someone. Desire grows in the space of uncertainty, not in pursuit. Because here's the truth. When you stop chasing, you become magnetic. When you create emotional tension, you generate a gravitational field that attracts the other person toward you. And that's what we'll talk about in the next point. The third key to generating intense desire is what Strauss calls the principle of perceived value. Each person has a perceived value in the social market, and that value determines how much desire they can generate. But contrary to what most people think, this value is not determined by external factors like beauty or wealth, but by how you perceive yourself and how you communicate that value to others. The third powerful phrase is, "I've noticed that you're different when you're with me than when you're with others. I like that version of you." Why does this phrase generate so much desire? Because you're telling the person something we all want to hear, that you bring out a special and unique version of them that no one else sees. You're acknowledging their individuality and, at the same time, creating an exclusive bond between the two of you. As Strauss explains, people don't fall in love with you, they fall in love with how they feel when they're with you. And this phrase makes them feel special, unique, and valued. The psychology behind this is profound. We all wear different social masks depending on the context, but we long for someone who sees our most authentic version and values it. When you recognize that authenticity, you create an emotional bond that goes far beyond physical attraction. Imagine you're with someone after having spent some time together, and you notice how they act differently with you than with their friends or in social situations. In a moment of intimacy, you say, "You know, I've noticed that you're different when we're alone. There's a tranquility and depth in you that you don't show to others. I really like that version of you." In that moment, you've created an emotional connection that generates a much more intense desire than any compliment about their physical appearance. Have you noticed how some people may not be the most attractive by conventional standards, but they have a magnetic capacity to attract others? It's because they've mastered the art of making others feel special. It's not what they have, it's how they make others feel. Try this exercise. Pay attention to how the person you're interested in acts in different social contexts. How are they with their friends? How are they with strangers? How are they when they're alone with you? Identify those subtle differences and, at the right moment, use the third powerful phrase to recognize that unique version you see. It's not a technique. It's a genuine observation that, when properly communicated, creates a deep bond. Repeat this mantra. I see the best version of others and reflect it back to them. Because here's the truth. The most intense desire doesn't come from what you are, but from how you make the other person feel. When you master this skill, you can create deep connections with anyone who interests you. If you're enjoying this content and want to completely transform your social and romantic life, make sure to like this video and activate the notification bell. Every week, we share advanced strategies that you won't find anywhere else, and that's what we'll talk about in the next point. To elevate the power of these three phrases, you need to understand what Strauss calls the art of timing. No matter how powerful these phrases are, if you use them at the wrong time, they will lose all their impact. Perfect timing requires a skill that very few master: reading facial micro-expressions and body language. Strauss discovered that the exact moment to use these phrases is when you detect what he calls moments of emotional openness, those brief instances when the person lowers their defenses and appears more receptive. These moments are identified by subtle signals: a dilation of the pupils, a slight inclination of the body toward you, an accidental touch, or a change in voice tone to a softer and more intimate one. Most people never notice these moments because they're too busy thinking about what they're going to say next or worried about how they themselves look. But when you learn to identify these moments of emotional openness, you can use the powerful phrases with devastating impact. As Strauss says, seduction doesn't happen in what you say, but in the silences between your words. These moments of emotional openness usually occur after you've shared something personal, after a moment of genuine laughter, or when you've experienced something emotionally significant together, however small it may be. Imagine you're having a normal conversation, but suddenly you notice that subtle change in the gaze, that inclination toward you. It's at that precise moment when you should use one of the 3 powerful phrases. The impact will be 10 times greater than if you used it at any other time. Have you ever wondered why sometimes you say something and it has no effect, but other times you say exactly the same thing and it generates an intense emotional response? The difference isn't in the words, but in the moment when you say them. Try this exercise for the next week. Don't try to use any of the powerful phrases. Just practice identifying moments of emotional openness. Observe the people you interact with. Notice when their pupils dilate, an unconscious sign of interest, when their body leans toward you, when their voice tone changes. Keep a mental record of these moments. This conscious observation will allow you to develop an intuition that most people never acquire. Repeat this mantra. I am fully present and aware of moments of emotional connection. Because here's the truth, most opportunities to create intense desire are lost because people aren't really present in the moment. They're trapped in their own thoughts, worries, and insecurities. When you break that pattern and become fully aware of the other person, the opportunities to use these powerful phrases multiply. And that's what we'll talk about in the next point. The 5th and most powerful element to generate intense desire is what Strauss calls the principle of emotional investment. This is the master level that separates true artists of seduction from amateurs. No matter how powerful your phrases are, if the other person is not emotionally invested in you, the desire will be superficial and fleeting. Emotional investment occurs when a person has dedicated time, energy, attention, or vulnerability to you. The more they invest, the more they value you. It's a fundamental psychological principle known as the IKEA effect. We value more what has cost us effort to obtain or build. As Strauss explains, it's not your job to chase, it's your job to make them chase you. And that only happens when the other person is emotionally invested in you. But here's the dilemma. How do you get someone to invest emotionally in you from the beginning? The answer lies in creating what Strauss calls open loops. An open loop is an unfinished story, an unanswered question, an unsolved mystery. The human brain is programmed to seek closure, to complete the incomplete. When you deliberately create these open loops in your interactions, the other person's mind will keep coming back to you even when you're not present. For example, you might say, "There's something I noticed about you that I found really interesting, but I'm not sure if it's the right time to tell you," and then change the subject. Or, "I had a dream about you last night that surprised me. It made me see you in a completely different way." When you create these open loops, the other person will invest mental energy in you, thinking about what you might have noticed or what you dreamed about. But there's an even deeper level of emotional investment you can generate. Strauss calls it strategic confession. It's about sharing something vulnerable about yourself, something you wouldn't normally share with others. This calculated vulnerability invites the other person to reciprocate with their own vulnerability, creating a cycle of accelerated intimacy that generates intense desire. Have you ever wondered why sometimes you feel an instant connection with someone you just met, as if you've known them all your life? It's because, consciously or unconsciously, this exchange of vulnerabilities has occurred, creating an accelerated, intimate bond. Most people are afraid to show vulnerability because they fear appearing weak. But strategic vulnerability is one of the most powerful tools for generating intense desire. As Strauss says, true confidence is being able to show vulnerability without fear of rejection. Try this exercise. Identify something personal about yourself, not necessarily a deep secret, but something you wouldn't normally share in a first or second conversation. It could be a fear, an insecurity, a childhood dream, or a moment when you felt truly alive. The next time you're with someone who interests you and you notice a moment of emotional openness, share this vulnerability. Then, observe how they respond. Most likely, they will reciprocate with their own vulnerability, creating that cycle of accelerated intimacy that generates intense desire. Repeat this mantra: my conscious vulnerability is my greatest strength. Because here's the deepest truth. The most intense desire doesn't come from the perfect masks we show to the world, but from those rare and precious moments when we allow ourselves to be truly seen by another person. If you've made it this far, it's because you really want to master the art of seduction at a level that few achieve. Like this video right now and share it with someone you think could benefit from this information. And now, activate the bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos, where we'll delve even deeper into these strategies. The truth is that generating intense desire is not about manipulation or superficial techniques. It's about deeply understanding human psychology and creating genuine connections that awaken powerful emotions. The 3 phrases we've discussed today are just the beginning of a journey toward mastering emotional communication. Let's recap what we've learned. The principle of the emotional mirror teaches us that desire arises when we feel truly seen and understood. The phrase, "I'm intrigued by that part of you that you don't show to others," activates this principle. The principle of emotional tension shows us that without some uncertainty there is no desire. The phrase, "I like you but I'm not sure if we would work together," creates that necessary tension. The principle of perceived value reminds us that people fall in love with how they feel when they're with us. The phrase, "I've noticed that you're different when you're with me," reinforces that special feeling. But beyond these phrases, what really makes the difference is your conscious presence, your ability to identify moments of emotional openness, and your courage to be strategically vulnerable. When you combine all these elements, you not only generate intense desire, but you create deep and meaningful connections that can completely transform your relational life. In this world where social interactions become increasingly superficial and digital, mastering these skills gives you an incomparable advantage, not only in the romantic realm but in all your interpersonal relationships, because deep down, we all long for the same thing: to be seen, to be valued, and to feel connected at a deep level. The challenge I propose to you today is simple but transformative. Comment below with the following statement: I choose to be aware of moments of connection and use them to create deeper bonds. This public commitment will be the first step toward a new way of relating to others. Remember that the true power is not in the techniques, but in the intention behind them. If your intention is to manipulate and use others, none of these strategies will work in the long term. But if your intention is to create genuine and enriching connections, these tools will help you break down the barriers that normally separate us from others. If this video has been valuable to you, make sure to subscribe right now. Activate the notification bell and share it with someone you think could benefit from this information. Every week we publish new content designed to help you master the art of emotional communication and ethical seduction. See you in the next video.